The gunshot didn't sound the way movies make it sound. There was no echoing boom, no dramatic slow motion. Just a sharp, ugly crack that ripped through the quiet afternoon like glass shattering inside your chest. For half a second, my brain refused to understand what my ears had heard. Our neighborhood was supposed to be safe. Manicured lawns, HOA signs, quiet rules, kids riding bikes without fear. Gunshots didn't belong here. Not in this place. Not on this street. Not near my daughter. Then I heard her scream. It wasn't loud at first. It was small, broken, confused. Like her body hadn't caught up to the pain yet. That sound hit me harder than the gunshot. Because in that scream was a question no child should ever have to ask. Why is this happening to me? I dropped everything and ran. My name is Mark Reynolds. Most people in that neighborhood knew me as that quiet guy at the end of the cul-de-sac. The one who waved politely but didn't attend HOA barbecues. The one who kept his lawn neat but didn't kiss anyone's ring. They didn't know much about me, and I preferred it that way. Especially her. Karen Whitmore. She was the HOA president. Self-appointed sheriff of a suburban kingdom. Clipboard always in hand. Voice always loud. Smile always fake. She lived 3 houses down from us and acted like she owned every inch of pavement between our driveways. I crossed paths with her before. Everyone had. But none of those encounters prepared me for what I saw when I turned the corner. My 13-year-old daughter, Lily, was on the ground. Her bike was twisted beside her like a broken toy. One shoe was missing. Blood was spreading across the concrete in a way that didn't look real, too dark, too fast. And standing a few feet away, shaking but still upright, was Karen. Her hands were locked around a handgun, like she didn't know what to do with it anymore. For a moment, time froze. People always say that in emergencies, training takes over. That you don't think, you act. That's true. But what they don't tell you is that before training kicks in, there's a split second where your heart tries to tear itself out of your chest. I ran past Karen without looking at her. I dropped to my knees beside Lily, my hands already moving, already checking, already praying. Her eyes were wide, glassy with shock. She was breathing fast, shallow, but she was breathing. "Dad?" she whispered. "It hurts." "I know, baby," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I've got you. I'm right here." The bullet hadn't hit her chest. Thank God. It had struck her upper thigh, dangerously close to the femoral artery. Blood soaked my hands as I pressed down, hard, counting seconds in my head. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. Training. Focus. Don't panic. Don't let her see fear. Around us, doors were opening. Neighbors were coming out. Phones were being raised. Someone was crying. Someone else was shouting. But Karen, she hadn't moved. She just stood there, pale, breathing fast, eyes locked on the gun like it had betrayed her. She was trespassing. Karen suddenly screamed. Her voice cracked, shrill and defensive. She was riding too fast. She almost hit me. I didn't look up. "Call 911, I yelled. "Now!" Someone did. I could hear the dispatcher's calm voice echoing from a phone somewhere. "Ambulance on the way. Police notified. Stay on the line." Karen took a step closer. "I warned her," she insisted, her voice rising. "I told her kids aren't allowed to ride bikes on this street. It's in the HOA rules." That was the first moment I felt something besides fear. Anger. A cold, focused anger that started low in my chest and spread outward. But I swallowed it. This wasn't about Karen. Not yet. This was about Lily. Keeping her alive. Keeping her calm. "You're going to be okay," I told my daughter, brushing hair off her face. "Just keep looking at me." She nodded, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Karen kept talking. She always did. She talked when she was wrong. She talked when she was scared. She talked to control the narrative. "I felt threatened," she said, louder now, making sure everyone heard. "I have the right to defend myself." She came at me, my hands clenched. My 13-year-old daughter, on a bike, came at a grown woman with a gun. I finally looked up at her. She flinched. Maybe it was my eyes. Maybe it was the blood on my hands. Maybe it was the way I stood slowly, deliberately, placing my body between her and my child. But something shifted in that moment. For the first time since I'd met her, Karen Whitmore looked unsure. "You shot a child," I said quietly. She shouldn't have been there," Karen snapped. "The HOA rules." "I don't care about your rules," I said, my voice low, controlled. "You shot a child." Sirens wailed in the distance now. Closer. Fast. Karen straightened her shoulders like she was preparing for battle. "I know my rights," she said. "I want a lawyer." I almost laughed. Almost. Because what she didn't know, what no one on that street knew, was that I knew her rights better than she did. I'd spent my entire adult life enforcing them, protecting them, sometimes even bending them when justice required it. But I hadn't told anyone where I worked. Not because I was hiding, because titles change how people act. And I liked seeing who they really were. Karen saw me as just another homeowner. Another man she could intimidate with fines and threats and paperwork. She had no idea who she'd just crossed. The paramedics arrived first. They moved fast, efficient, calm. I stepped back as they took over, answering questions, giving details. The police cruisers pulled up seconds later. 2 officers stepped out. They froze when they saw me. I caught the flicker of recognition in their eyes, the slight widening, the almost imperceptible shift in posture. "Chief?" one of them said quietly. Karen heard it. Her head snapped toward them. "Chief?" she repeated, confusion creeping into her voice. I didn't look at her. I was watching as they loaded Lily onto the stretcher, watching her small hand reach for mine. "I'm coming with you," I said to her. "I promise." She nodded weakly. Behind me, Karen laughed. A short, nervous laugh. "Oh, please," she said. "Don't tell me you're trying to scare me. Everyone thinks they're important." One of the officers turned to her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice firm now. "This is Police Chief Mark Reynolds." The color drained from her face. "No," she said. "No, that's not. I've been the chief of this city for 11 years, I said, finally turning to face her. "And you just shot my daughter." Silence crashed down like a wave. Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The gun slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the pavement. An officer immediately stepped forward and kicked it away. I didn't know," she stammered. I didn't mean." "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't know. And you didn't care." She started crying then. Loud, ugly sobs. The kind meant to draw sympathy, to soften consequences. I'd seen it 1,000 times in interrogation rooms. It didn't work. "Ma'am," the officer said, snapping handcuffs around her wrists. "You are under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon." Karen screamed. She screamed about the HOA, about her stress, about how unfair this was, about how she was a good person. No one listened. As they led her away, she twisted to look at me. Desperation etched across her face. "Please," she begged. "You have to understand. I was just doing my job." I leaned in close enough that only she could hear me. "This," I said, "is me doing mine." The ambulance doors closed. Sirens screamed again as they sped away. I stood there in the middle of the street, blood drying on my hands, neighbors staring at me like they were seeing me for the first time. They weren't wrong, because that day didn't just change my daughter's life. It changed all of theirs. And Karen Whitmore had no idea how far this was going to go. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. That clean, sharp scent that never quite masks the truth of what happens inside those walls. I walked beside the gurney as they rushed Lily down the hallway, fluorescent lights flashing over her pale face like a strobe. Every beep of the monitor felt too loud. Every second felt stolen. "Dad, am I going to lose my leg?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely more than a breath. That question nearly broke me. "No," I said instantly, gripping her hand tighter. "No, sweetheart. You're not losing anything. You hear me? You're going to be okay." I needed her to believe it, even though a small, traitorous part of my mind was doing calculations. Angle of entry, blood loss, distance from the artery. I shut that part down. This wasn't a case. This was my child. They pushed me back when we reached the operating room doors. "You can't come any further," a nurse said gently. I nodded because nodding was easier than speaking. The doors swung shut, and suddenly the hallway felt too big, too empty. I stood there alone, my hands still sticky with my daughter's blood. That was when my phone started vibrating. Not ringing, vibrating. I didn't need to look to know why. Word travels fast when violence breaks the illusion of safety, especially when it involves a gun, especially when it happens in a quiet HOA community. By the time I answered, my deputy chief was already talking. "Chief, it's everywhere," he said. "Neighbors posted videos. Someone leaked your name. Local news is on their way to the hospital." I closed my eyes. "Karen's in custody?" I asked. "Yes, booked and held. Weapons secured. Statements are coming in. But..." He hesitated. "She's already claiming self-defense." Of course she was. "She says Lily was charging her," he continued, "that she feared for her life." I laughed then. A short, humorless sound that echoed off the hospital walls. "A 13-year-old girl on a bicycle," I said, "charging an armed adult." "I know," he said quietly, "but her lawyer's already involved." That made me open my eyes. "Already?" "She called someone from the patrol car." I exhaled slowly. Karen Whitmore was exactly the kind of person who collected favors the way others collected throw pillows. She volunteered in the right places, donated to the right causes, knew the right people. She'd spent years positioning herself as untouchable. She thought this was just another argument she could talk her way out of. "Handle the media," I said. "I'm staying here." "Understood, Chief." I hung up and slid down into a chair, my elbows on my knees, my head in my hands. That was when the adrenaline finally faded enough for the fear to catch up. What if I'd been a minute later? What if the bullet had been an inch higher? What if... "Mr. Reynolds?" I looked up. A doctor stood in front of me, her mask pulled down, her eyes tired but kind. "She's out of surgery," she said. "The bullet missed the artery by less than a centimeter. She's very lucky." Lucky. I nodded because this time nodding came with relief so sharp it almost hurt. "She's going to recover," the doctor continued. "But there will be physical therapy, and emotional trauma. That kind of experience stays with a child." "I know," I said softly. When I finally saw Lily again, she was pale and groggy, but alive. Tubes and wires surrounded her, machines humming quietly. I sat beside her bed and brushed my thumb across her knuckles. She opened her eyes. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. That question hurt worse than the gunshot. "No," I said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Not one thing." She frowned slightly. "That lady was really angry." I swallowed. "Yes," I said. "She was. And she had a gun." "Yes." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Why did she shoot me?" I didn't have a good answer. Not one a child could understand without losing something important. "Because she thought rules mattered more than people," I said carefully. "And because she forgot how powerful her choices were." Lily closed her eyes again, exhausted. I stayed there, listening to the steady beep of the monitor, watching her chest rise and fall. Outside that room, the world was already turning this into a spectacle. By morning, it was everywhere. HOA president shoots teen girl. Police chief's daughter injured in suburban shooting. Self-defense or reckless abuse of power? That last one made my jaw tighten. Because here's the part no one tells you when you wear a badge high enough. The moment something personal happens, people stop seeing you as human. You become a symbol, a talking point, a headline. Karen's attorney went on television before Lily even woke up fully. "She was under immense stress," he said, his tone smooth and practiced. "She believed she was in danger. We ask the public not to rush to judgment." Rush to judgment. as if a grown woman firing a weapon at a child required careful consideration. The HOA released a statement too, carefully worded, neutral, bloodless. We are aware of an unfortunate incident involving one of our board members. We are cooperating fully with authorities. Unfortunate. That was the word they chose. Not violent. Not criminal. Unfortunate. I watched the press conference from Lily's hospital room. The volume turned low. My fists clenched with every sentence. Not because I was surprised, but because I recognized the strategy. They were trying to blur the lines. Make it complicated. Make it debatable. Turn a clear wrong into a complex situation. Karen was counting on the system to protect her. On technicalities. On language. On the idea that fear excuses everything. She forgot something important. I knew the system better than she ever would. That afternoon, I walked into the precinct for the first time since the shooting. The room went quiet. Officers straightened. Conversations stopped. Not out of fear but respect. And maybe something else. Anger. She shot a kid. One of them muttered as I passed. I raised a hand. Do your jobs? I said calmly. Buy the book. They nodded. They always did. Karen was in an interrogation room when I arrived. Not because I needed to see her, but because I needed to make a point. I stood behind the glass, watching as she paced. Her hair disheveled, her confidence cracking. Gone was the HOA president with the clipboard. In her place was a woman realizing that titles only work inside the bubble that recognizes them. She saw me through the glass and froze. You can't be involved in this, she snapped as soon as I entered the room. Conflict of interest. You're right, I said evenly. Which is why I'm not interrogating you. Her relief was instant and premature. But I am here to inform you, I continued, that this case will be handled by an external prosecutor. No favors. No shortcuts. No quiet settlements. Her eyes widened. You're overreacting, she said desperately. It was an accident. Accidents don't involve pulling a trigger, I replied. She leaned forward, lowering her voice like we were sharing a secret. You know how this looks, she said. If I go down, people will say you used your position. I leaned back, meeting her gaze. If you don't go down, I said, they'll say the system protects people like you. Silence stretched between us. For the first time, Karen Whitmore understood something she'd never considered. This wasn't about power. It was about accountability. And accountability doesn't care who you think you are. As I stood to leave, she called after me. Please, she said, her voice shaking. I didn't know she was your daughter. I stopped at the door. That, I said without turning around, is exactly the problem. Outside, cameras flashed the moment I stepped into daylight. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones pushed forward. Chief Reynolds, do you believe justice can be served objectively in this case? Are you recusing yourself? Is your daughter recovering? I paused. She's alive, I said, and that's what matters. Then I walked away, but I knew this was just beginning, because Karen Whitmore wasn't done fighting. And neither was I. The courtroom felt colder than the hospital. Not physically, emotionally. Wood-paneled walls, polished benches, flags standing stiff in the corners. Everything about that room was designed to feel orderly, controlled. Like chaos could be boxed in if you gave it enough rules. Karen Whitmore walked in like she still belonged there. She wore a light blue blazer, hair neatly styled, glasses perched just right on her nose. The same look she used at HOA meetings when she wanted to seem reasonable. Approachable. Harmless. If you didn't know what she'd done, you might mistake her for a concerned PTA mom instead of a woman who'd fired a gun at a child. She didn't look at me. Not when she sat at the defense table. Not when the judge entered. Not even when Lily's wheelchair was rolled into the front row. That was the first mistake. Lily hadn't wanted to come. The doctors advised against it. Too soon, they said. Too raw. But Lily had insisted, her jaw set in that way she got when she'd already made up her mind. I need her to see me, she said quietly. I'm not just a headline. So there she was, 13 years old, leg wrapped, crutches resting against her chair. Smaller than she'd been before the shooting, not physically but somehow exposed. Like the world had taken something fragile and put it on display. The courtroom murmured when people noticed her. Karen finally glanced up. Their eyes met. Karen looked away instantly. The judge cleared his throat and called the case. The prosecutor stood, calm and precise, laying out the charges. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Reckless endangerment. Unlawful discharge of a firearm. Each word landed heavier than the last. Karen's attorney rose next. And that's when the narrative shift began. My client, he said smoothly, is a law-abiding citizen who found herself in a terrifying situation. She believed she was under threat. She acted in fear. Fear. That word again. He talked about crime rates, about how stressful leadership roles can be, about how kids these days move unpredictably. He never said Lily's name. Not once. I felt my hands curl into fists. Then he did something bold. Something calculated. And let us not ignore, he added, glancing briefly toward me, the unique position of influence held by the alleged victim's father. There it was. The real play. They weren't defending Karen. They were attacking me. The implication hung in the air like smoke. This is only a case because of who he is. The judge raised an eyebrow but allowed him to continue. Karen's attorney leaned into it. We must ask ourselves, he said, whether this prosecution is truly about justice or about power. I felt Lily shift beside me. I leaned closer, whispering, You okay? She nodded, but her knuckles were white. The prosecutor responded sharply, pointing out the video evidence. Multiple angles, security cameras, phone recordings, Lily riding past ringing her bike bell, Karen stepping into the street, Karen yelling, Karen raising the gun. No charge, no threat, just a child passing by. Karen's attorney objected repeatedly. Tone, context, interpretation. But the footage didn't lie. Still, I could feel it. The room wasn't settled. Not yet, because facts don't always win immediately. Stories do. And Karen was trying to tell a better one. During a recess, reporters swarmed the hallway. Cameras pointed. Questions fired. Chief Reynolds, do you believe you can remain impartial? Is your role influencing this case? Do you think Karen Whitmore is being unfairly targeted? I said nothing. I didn't need to, because while Karen was busy shaping perception, she'd overlooked something crucial. She assumed this was about me. It wasn't. The next day, the prosecution called their first witness. A neighbor, then another, then another. Different ages, different backgrounds, same pattern. Karen screaming at kids for chalk on sidewalks, for playing too loud, for riding scooters too fast. Karen threatening fines, calling police, filming children with her phone. One witness broke down on the stand. My son stopped going outside, she said, tears spilling over. He was scared of her. The courtroom shifted. This wasn't an isolated incident anymore. It was a pattern. Karen sat stiffly, jaw tight, eyes forward. Her attorney scribbled notes, whispering urgently during pauses. The story was slipping from their grip. Then came the moment I'd been dreading and waiting for. Lily was called to testify. The room went completely silent as she was helped to the stand. She sat up straighter than I'd ever seen her. Her voice shook at first, but she kept going. She yelled at me, Lily said. I slowed down. I rang my bell. I thought she'd move. She swallowed. Then she pointed the gun. Karen stared at the table. I remember thinking, this can't be real, Lily continued. Adults don't do that. Her voice cracked. I didn't know she was going to shoot. I just wanted to go home. I felt something inside me fracture. The defense cross-examined gently, almost tenderly. Too gently. Like Lily was something fragile they were afraid to break in front of the jury. Did you feel scared? The attorney asked. Yes, Lily said. And you might agree that fear can make people act irrationally? Lily paused. Then she looked straight at him. I was scared, she said. I didn't hurt anyone. That was it. That single sentence did more damage than any legal argument could. Because suddenly, fear didn't excuse Karen. It exposed her. The prosecution rested. The defense called Karen to the stand. She took a deep breath, dabbing her eyes before speaking. Her voice trembled, just enough. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt," she said. "I love children. I was just overwhelmed." She talked about stress, about responsibility, about how people don't respect authority anymore. Authority. There it was again. She never apologized to Lily, not once. Then the prosecutor stood for cross-examination. "Ms. Whitmore," he said calmly, "how long have you owned that firearm?" 10 years, Karen replied. "And in those 10 years, had you ever discharged it before?" "No." "So you knew exactly how dangerous it was?" Karen hesitated. "Yes. And yet you chose to point it at a child." "I felt threatened." "By a bicycle?" The courtroom held its breath. Karen snapped. "She wouldn't listen," she shouted. "None of them ever listen." The mask slipped. The judge banged the gavel. "Order." Karen sat back, breathing hard, eyes wild. And in that moment everyone saw it. This wasn't fear. This was control. The verdict wouldn't come that day. Deliberations were scheduled. Tension followed us out of the courtroom like a shadow. Outside, Karen's supporters, few, but loud, held signs. "Self-defense is a right. Don't criminalize fear." Across the street, another group had gathered. "No one is above the law. Protect our children." The lines were drawn. That night, Lily asked me something unexpected. "Dad," she said quietly, "what if they let her go?" I didn't answer right away. "Then," I said slowly, "we make sure the truth doesn't." She nodded. Neither of us slept. Because tomorrow wasn't just about a verdict. It was about what kind of world we were willing to accept. And Karen Whitmore still thought she could talk her way out of it. She was wrong. The jury took 9 hours. 9 long, grinding hours where time seemed to fold in on itself. Where every second felt heavier than the last. The courthouse hallways filled and emptied. Reporters paced. Lawyers whispered. Karen's supporters prayed loudly enough to be heard. Lily sat beside me, her leg elevated, her fingers tracing the same pattern on the blanket over and over again. She didn't ask any more questions. That scared me more than if she had. When the bailiff finally stepped out and said the words, "The jury has reached a verdict," the air in the room changed. People stood. Chairs scraped. Breath caught. Karen walked back in looking confident. Too confident. She'd reapplied her lipstick, smoothed her blazer, lifted her chin. She glanced toward the gallery, searching for reassurance, for allies, for proof that she was still in control. Her eyes landed on Lily again, and for just a fraction of a second, something flickered across her face. Fear. The jury filed in. 12 ordinary people who'd been forced to stare at something ugly and decide whether to look away. They sat. The judge nodded to the foreperson. "Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?" "Yes, Your Honor." My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. "On the charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, how do you find the defendant?" The room stopped breathing. "Guilty," Karen gasped, loud, sharp, like the word had struck her physically. "On the charge of reckless endangerment of a minor?" "Guilty." Her attorney grabbed her arm as her knees buckled. She shook her head violently, whispering no, 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 like denial might rewrite reality. The judge continued. "On the charge of unlawful discharge of a firearm?" "Guilty." It was over. Karen Whitmore, HOA president, self-appointed ruler, neighborhood tyrant, collapsed into her chair. The confidence drained from her body all at once, leaving behind something small and exposed. She finally looked at Lily, really looked, and for the first time since that afternoon on the street, she spoke directly to her. "I'm sorry," Karen whispered. "It was too late. Not because apologies don't matter, but because timing does." The judge set sentencing for a later date, but the damage was already done. Karen was remanded into custody immediately. As deputies moved toward her, she panicked. "This isn't fair," she cried. "I was scared. I didn't mean it." The judge's voice was calm but firm. "Intent does not erase consequence." Handcuffs clicked closed. That sound echoed longer than the gunshot ever had. Outside the courthouse, the reaction was immediate. Cheers from one side, silence from the other. Cameras surged forward. "What does this verdict mean for you and your family?" someone shouted. I didn't answer, because this verdict wasn't about me. It was about a 13-year-old girl who should have been riding her bike without fear. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. Karen stood before the court looking older somehow. Smaller. Her attorney asked for leniency, cited stress, mental health, community service. Letters of support were submitted, thin, impersonal things written by people who'd never been yelled at, never threatened, never watched their child flinch at the sight of an adult with authority. Then the judge asked if anyone wished to speak on behalf of the victim. Lily squeezed my hand. "I want to," she said. The courtroom murmured as she was helped to the podium. She adjusted the microphone, took a breath, and looked straight at Karen. "I used to feel safe in my neighborhood," Lily said. "I don't anymore." Karen's head dropped. "I still have nightmares," Lily continued. "Sometimes I hear the shot again. Sometimes I can't ride my bike because my hands shake." Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. "You didn't just shoot me," she said. "You took something from me, and I think you should understand that." The judge nodded slowly. Karen was sentenced to 12 years. Gasps rippled through the room. Not because it was unheard of, but because people like Karen rarely face real consequences. She screamed as they led her away. Not in anger this time, in terror. And for the first time, no one rushed to comfort her. The HOA dissolved within a month. Turns out, when fear is the foundation of leadership, it doesn't survive exposure. The board resigned one by one. Rules were rewritten. Policies changed. Cameras came down. Kids started playing outside again. Slowly, cautiously. Healing is never fast. Lily's recovery wasn't easy. Physical therapy hurt. Emotionally, it was worse. Loud noises made her jump. Authority figures made her tense. For a while, she refused to go near that street. I didn't push her. One evening, months later, she surprised me. "Can we walk past it?" she asked. So we did. The sun was low. The street looked ordinary, harmless. That was the hardest part. She stopped where it had happened, stood quietly. Then she looked up at me. "She doesn't get to own this place," Lily said. And just like that, something shifted. Lily rides her bike again now. Not every day, not without fear, but with courage. And that matters more. As for me, I stayed on as police chief for 2 more years before retiring. Not because I was tired, but because my priorities had changed. I'd spent my career protecting strangers. It was time to protect my family. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not revealing who I was sooner. If things might have gone differently, I tell them the truth. If Karen had known who I was, she might not have pulled the trigger. But she still would have been the kind of person who could. And that's the part people need to understand. Power doesn't reveal character. It exposes it. Karen Whitmore didn't shoot my daughter because she was afraid. She shot her because she believed rules mattered more than humanity, and that consequences were for other people. She was wrong. And my daughter is alive because the truth mattered more than her authority. So if you ever wonder whether one moment can change everything, it can. Just ask a girl who survived it.